Today, in Flex in the City, I talk to Phil Brown and we discuss people-driven leadership, global custody, and the human side of financial services. All that happening right now in Flex in the City. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. This is Rachel Treese for Flex in the City, and I'm delighted to have probably my first fellow Northerner from the United Kingdom on Flex in the City. His name is Phil Brown, and he's the CEO of Clearstream Banking S.A. in Luxembourg. Pleasure to have you on the podcast, Phil.
Pleasure to be here. I don't think there are that many of us in the city, unfortunately. I was one of the few in the 80s who listened to Norman Tebbett's advice and got on my bike. So I ended up in London.
Absolutely. So if you can't understand us as we get into our northern accents, everybody, that's why. So Phil and I are both from the north. So Phil, tell me a little bit about your career and how did you enter the financial services industry and make it to Luxembourg?
So I'm going to age myself now, Rachel, by telling you what got me into this. So mid to late 80s, I was thinking about going to university, and we were just going into Big Bang which was 86, 87. And the markets were really starting to take off. This whole deregulation thing was happening. And I thought, I want to go and this looks really exciting. I love doing maths at school and I love doing economics. And I wanted to go and do a degree which would lead me into this new exciting world of deregulated financial services. So I actually did a degree in banking and finance. And there weren't that many places back then you can do it. I think everybody does it now. So I went and did a degree in banking. And at the end of that, I applied through what used to be called the milk round.
Yes.
And I got a job with Barclays as a graduate on their grad program. So that got me into banking. So I did a couple of years in branches. Mm-hmm. Everybody had to do that. You had to work on the till and lend people money and bounce people's checks and all that kind of thing. And then they sent me to Spain for 2 years. And I worked in Madrid for a couple of years. And when I came back was the end of the grad program. And at the end of that grad program, your papers got collected and got sent around Barclays Group, and anybody who was interested in you and had a job would pick you up. And I got 3 job offers at the end of it, one of which was in this business called global custody. And that's how I ended up doing what I'm doing today. So straight off the grad program, I went into this thing called Barclays Global Security Services, which was trying to expand into a European business. They didn't have any European clients. They only had UK clients at the time. And I worked for an amazing guy called Martin Brennan, who's now retired. But Martin was building up this team, and I was really attracted to this idea of being able to use my languages. I'd lived in Spain and go and travel a little bit with the job and do something a bit international. So it wasn't by design at all. It was total accident, and partly because of the charm of this Irishman who was the hiring manager, who I thought, this is a guy I could work for. So that was how I ended up in it.
I'm curious, Martin's leadership style, what was that like, and what was so inspiring about his own leadership style?
He was running a sales organization, and he was just very energetic, very positive, very people focused. I'll tell you a little anecdote, and it always stuck with me. I'd been working for him for about 5 or 6 months, and I said to him, "You're sending me out and doing all these client things, I'm visiting people, I'm taking people out to lunch and dinner. You've never questioned my expenses." I said, why have you never questioned what I've done? He said, we get told in sales, we get told no 9 times out of 10. And if I tell you no, it's going to deflate you. So my job is to build you back up again. So that when you go out and battle for business from our competitors, that you're the best version of you. So why would I drag you down by being negative about things like your expenses? If you're taking the mickey, then I'll pull you up on it, but you're not. And it was a really important bit of guy. I was only a young lad at the time, 23, 24 years of age, but having a senior manager talk to me about his job as my motivator and about making sure I went out, do my job with the right attitude and impetus was a really important moment, actually. So I thought that was very cool.
Yeah, so he's the forerunner of what I call a culture of agency, which is empowerment on steroids, isn't it? Absolutely. Yeah. So talking about young men, I understand that you've got a son who's just started at university, and you have three kids. How old are your kids?
So my son's just finished. He's
Right.
my eldest. I've got boy, girl, girl.
Yeah.
So my son's just finished 5 years. He's done a master's in mechanical engineering with a year
Right.
in industry in the middle of it. So he's now looking for a job. I'll talk about him in a minute. My middle one is going into the 4th year of med school. So she's just started today at Sapienza University in Rome, where she's doing 10 weeks in obs and gynae
Wow.
in a hospital in Rome. She doesn't speak very much Italian, so that's going to be interesting to see how she gets on. And my third one's just started a politics degree at Edinburgh University. So I've got one in Wales, one in England, one in Scotland. So I've done my bit for the home nations and sent the three of them to 3 different places. But they're all great. They're fab. I'm astonished by them every day about how amazing young people are these days.
Absolutely. And if I was to ask them, what does dad do? Would they understand what you do?
Well, I tried, even people who work in our industry don't understand what we do sometimes at the post-trade side. So, but yeah, I think they understand. They're not really young where they would say, my dad just flies everywhere. That's his job. Right? I do a lot of that. But I think they understand that we are the plumbing end of financial services. But that said, they're incredibly fascinated by what I do because I have this amazing job where I travel around the world and I meet central bank governors and finance ministers and public policy makers and CEOs of other organizations and get this insight, not just into financial services, but what's happening in the world. And that's what we talk about around the dinner table at home is what did you learn from this trip, Dad? So I think they think sometimes I'm more in the geopolitical world than the financial world, but I actually think the two things cross quite a lot.
Yeah. So given you're from the north of England, my mum sadly no longer with us, but she always liked things saying really simply and straightforward. So if you were to explain to somebody from the north of England exactly what global custody is all about, what would you say?
What I tend to say is when you go on your app and buy a share in Tesla or Apple,
Hmm.
there's a hugely complicated chain of institutions that sit below that. And what we do is bring all of that together and make it easier for everybody in the chain to do what they need to do. It's like we say, we are the plumbing. So,
Hmm.
when you buy that Apple share, that's like turning on a tap in your house. But the share is the water that's thrown through the pipes. And somehow that water's got to get from the treatment facility to your tap, and that's what we do. We're the pipes that go between the treatment facility and your tap. It's probably not the best way of describing it, but just to explain that there's a lot of stuff goes on in the background that you don't see, and that's what we do.
Absolutely. And we all need plumbing and we don't
Yeah,
need leaks.
yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if there's somebody young who was entering the financial services industry today, what would be your wise counsel to a young Gen Z like my daughter, maybe entering the industry in 2 or 3 years' time? What would you say to her?
Yeah. Do you know, I used to chair an industry association called ISA, the International Security Services Association, and all the big banks are on it, all the big infrastructures are on it, and I'm still on the board of that. And one of the things that we're spending quite a bit of time with is this question now.
Mm.
So, from two angles. So, first of all, what the ISA angle is, how do we encourage people to come into the post-trade industry? What
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think what we've not finished our work on it yet, but I think the key messages are: do you like working with people? It's although 98% of what we do is automated, the 2% is where the people connect with each other, and that's really important because the 2% is the really complicated stuff that we can't automate. So people communicating with people is really important. The second, do you like solving problems? Because that 2% is complex, it tends to be problem solving in nature. Do you have a high level of curiosity? And you really, if you have a high level of curiosity and you like solving problems, those kind of things go together. And that, do you have kind of an engineering brain? So it's not maths based like engineering is, but it's that kind of, we are in the financial engineering world, where that's why it's quite useful to describe it as plumbing. And I think increasingly, Rachel, what's really interesting is the impact of technology on what we do and how transformative the new technologies are going to be and how exciting that is for a young person coming in. when you think about, our journey to cloud, which is now 10 years since we started to move on that cloud journey, and what that's now facilitating in terms of cloud-based applications, cloud-native technology, AI, natural language, machine learning, all that kind of stuff. There's so much that's going to change as a result of the new technologies. And for the youngsters coming through, it's going to be really exciting.
It is, isn't it? It's going to
Yeah.
be, it's game changing what's going
Yeah.
on right now.
Yeah.
So in terms of going back to that people side, what do you think is going to be key for leaders in the industry? In terms of,
It's interesting because a lot of youngsters ask me, or younger people ask me, what you're a CEO, how did you get there? It must be, you must have this big plan. And I said, well, no, actually, it was a bit more random than that in terms of getting where I got to. But I do have, and I share this with my kids, I do have like 4 fundamental kind of guiding principles for any youngster that's coming into any industry, not just this industry. And of course, things like being technology native are important. Things like having good people skills are important. But I think that there's still 4 fundamental truths that if you don't have them, you just won't get to the big jobs. The first is make sure you've got the right boss. I mean, I've been really fortunate that I had, over the course of my career, I had 3 bosses. Martin was one of them, by the way, that I mentioned earlier, who gave me bigger jobs than I deserved and let me make mistakes and spread my wings and develop by being stretched. And if you've not got a boss that does that, you need to change your boss. The second is there's really no substitute for hard work. I think in this world of, Britain's Got Talent and Instagram influencers and stuff, it all seems like you can get there quickly and easily, but you can't. You've got to work hard, and you've got to put the hours in, and you've got to keep developing yourself. The third is make sure that if you're in a meeting and a problem gets surfaced, be the person that puts your hand up and says, "I'll get that done." Don't be the commentator on problems. Be the person that gets stuff done. And when you get a reputation for getting stuff done, you'll get given more to do. And then that will automatically feed back to that first one of doing more than you are really able to do because people want to load you with work. And then the fourth one is don't just be busy. You've got to be productive. Everybody can be busy, but if what you're doing is not contributing to the objectives of the company, then you're not actually doing anything of much value. So all of that, I think those things are really important for the next generation for career success. And a young guy, 23-year-old, was talking to me about this last week, and he said, "What was your grand plan? How did you, I said, look, it's not going to work like that. If you think you can plan out where you're going to be in 20 years' time, it's not going to work like that. You need to let it be a bit of a random walk and take the opportunities as they present themselves to you, but be flexible and be open to new opportunities."
Yeah, it's real growth mindset stuff, isn't it? Absolutely. Absolutely. So here's a question I've never asked anybody, but I think I can ask it of you, Phil, given that you're from Liverpool. If John Lennon was in the room with us now, he was giving some wise counsel on what the financial services industry could do to be even greater than it is, what would he be telling us?
I think he'd say that to be relevant and to be accepted and respected by the community at large, you've got to be better at explaining what your purpose is as an industry. Because I think that, fundamentally, what do? We help people save for their retirement. We help people efficiently manage their day-to-day lives. We keep people's investments safe. We actually, most importantly, and we've got real hard evidence of us as a company doing this, we get capital from people that have it to people that need it. And in doing so, we improve the lives of the people that need it, and not just at a local level, but at a national level or an international level. So being clearer about the fact that it isn't just rapacious traders or whatever who are making millions for themselves and ripping everybody off with the reputation that banking has. I think in 2008, when banking system collapsed and it caused all these problems, it really damaged the reputation of the industry, and we haven't done a very good job of explaining to wider society what we do, which is really great. And I think we could do a much better job at that. And we're not the NHS, right? We're not doctors, and we're not saving lives, but we definitely are impacting lives in a positive way if we do things properly with integrity. And most of us are doing things properly with integrity.
Yeah, I love what you've articulated. And honestly, this was one of the main motivations for this podcast. And what you've articulated is around purpose. So is that what motivates you, Phil? That purpose?
Yeah, I think that it's taken me a while to get to that conclusion, actually, Rachel. And it came to us because we were talking about how do we get our younger staff engaged with the company in a way that they really feel an emotional attachment to it. There's a great piece of work that Saatchi did. I don't know if you know, they have this concept that they call love marks, where brands that people will pay more money to work with because they're emotionally attached to them. And it's a real kind of, in financial services, it's really hard to be one of these things. But we were thinking, how do we become that for our people? And this is what we focused on. How do you make people realize that you're doing really important, some of the things you do are really important and having a real impact? So I wouldn't say it's what got me here, but it's certainly what's kept me here. What got me here was some of the things I talked about before around curiosity, problem solving. I love the fact that I have this incredibly international job, and that I've had a front row seat to everything that's happened in the last 30 years, not just in financial services, but, I was there for the Asian crisis in 97. I was there for Y2K. I was there for the Euro introduction, for the financial crisis, for the Euro crisis in 2010-11, then COVID, and various conflicts and all this and we just are lucky that we have this front row seat. So it's such a privilege to get on a plane and go and meet people who can give you incredible insights into what's happening in the world, and help fill you up in a way that it's not, you're developing a sense of what's going on in the world that's your sense. You're not just getting fed something by a journalist who may have their own political persuasion. So for me, that's the thing I love most about the job, about the quite aside from the impact we have, but with a curiosity and about and a really deep curiosity for the way the world functions. To have a job which gives you that on a day-to-day basis is amazing.
Yeah. And what do you think are some of the biggest geopolitical challenges? I might be sort of speaking, as the Germans would say, selbstverständlich. It goes without saying what's going on. But what do you think are some of the challenges that we might foresee in the coming couple of years?
Well, I think if I think selfishly about our industry, the financial services industry, one of the things that's given us these amazing careers and given our industry such great growth is globalization. The very nature of what we do is we move capital across borders. And in a world which is starting to deglobalize or fragment, that's somewhat of a threat to the industry that we work in, but also somewhat of a threat to the livelihood of our kids, because globalization has brought incredible efficiency to the world. It's enabled us to do more with the same resources. And any retreating from that will not be good for global economic growth, which won't be good for our kids. So that I'm concerned about that. And I'm concerned that we're entering an era of less of diplomacy and more of power in geopolitics. And diplomacy has served us all really well and kept us without a major conflict on the planet for nearly 100 years now. And we've all benefited, there's very few people alive today who have any knowledge of a world war or any memory of a world war.
Yeah.
And God forbid we would have another one. So that I'm much more concerned about that, what globalization has done in terms of bringing us all together rather than causing division, and us ending up with more division. So I just hope that sane heads will prevail. I mean, the people I meet when I travel around the world, I think people still believe strongly in the benefits of globalization. And a lot of what we're seeing is probably tactical more than strategic. And as an optimist, I think that we're going to come out of this okay, and it'll just be a slightly reset okay, not the one we were in before. But it's not going to. I'm not one of these doomsayers that says, "Oh, we're all going to go back to just farming and eating our own food and not doing anything." It's not. We're not going back. We're not going back to a unilateral world. We'll continue to be multilateral.
So if you were the fairy godmother and you could do one thing in the next 6 months to have a really huge impact on the industry, and you could change it like that, what would you do, Phil?
I think, being really selfish, it's really basic. I would digitize the whole AML KYC process.
Mm.
Because it's such a burden on the industry and on the regulators. And if you had digital records of who everybody was and you were able to track what they were doing, first of all, the industry only captures a fraction of the bad guys and bad girls who are functioning in the financial system, who are doing some of the bad stuff that's causing the world to be disruptive. Right?
Yeah.
So if we could catch all of them, then if you can stop the money flowing to and from those people, you stop the activity.
Yeah.
So number one, you would solve a problem. And, we're very keen. The industry's super keen to work with the lawmakers to stop bad people doing bad things. But the burden is so high that it's a drag on the resources of the financial services industry. So it's essential, but it's not very efficient. So if we could make it much more efficient, I think it would make a massive difference to both ends of the problem. The bad guys and girls being able to do what they do, and the banks being able to deploy their resources in ways which would actually help economic growth.
Yeah, I love that. So Phil, when you're not being a wonderful husband and a fantastic dad, outside of the industry and your job, what do you love doing?
I love cooking. I think that one of the reasons I think the reason I love it, and it's interesting because so many of my colleagues who work in financial services do something that involves using their hands, right? Because I think there's a very human need, Rachel, to actually physically produce something, and we don't. We move ones and zeros around, right? And so so many people who do DIY, who tinker with cars, who like gardening, and for me, it's cooking. So I love cooking, and it's nothing better to me than music on, a glass of wine, in front of the stove for an hour or two and prepare something and watch people enjoy it.
Yeah.
And then for exercise, I love cycling. I've always been on two wheels since I was a kid. And even when I'm no longer able to push the pedals, I'll get myself an e-bike. I'm always going to be on a bike to get me out into the fresh air.
Fantastic. So right now you're still a cyclist? You still go out on the bike?
I am, and not an e-bike. I'm still on my own horsepower.
Real bike. So if the financial services industry could learn something from being on two wheels, what could the industry learn from biking? And maybe Sir Chris Hoy and this amazing biking world that's out there. What could the industry learn from that?
I think there's a few things actually. One is when you're on a bike, it's pretty dangerous compared to being in a car. So you have to be aware of what's going on around you, but also you move at a slightly slower pace. So you're both concentrating, but enjoying moving at a slower pace and enjoying your environment. And I think sometimes we move so fast in what we do that we stop realizing how enjoyable it can be. And on the bike, I always find, sometimes I was just in visiting some friends in Bermuda, and I rented a bike for a couple of days while I was out there. And it's a small place, right? But I did the whole island in 2 days. And it was such a pleasure just to take some time and really see the island rather than see it from the window of a car. So, slowing down a little bit, I suppose, is what I'm saying, is what the bike helps me to do. The other thing,
go on.
The other thing is, if you read Dave Brailsford's book about when he was running the Sky cycling team, and that focus on marginal gains, it's so relevant to what we do in post-trade, where we're just trying to make every little thing as efficient as we can. And what they did, they took it to an absolute extreme. And I think that concept of marginal gains, if you apply that to all parts of your life, your professional and personal life, it's so important, right? And it's so impactful that the aggregation of many, many marginal gains turns into a big advantage.
Absolutely. That I believe in that 100%, Phil. It's what I'm passionate about it. So Phil Brown, CEO of Clearstream Banking, Luxembourg, S.A. Thank you so much. I've absolutely loved interviewing on this podcast today. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Rachel. Loved it. Loved it. Thank you very much.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Flex in the City. We hope that you found inspiration and valuable nuggets of wisdom to elevate your leadership journey. Don't miss out, subscribe on your favourite platform, and if you enjoyed the episode, please do leave us a review. Your feedback really matters. Thank you.